In a room bursting with celebration, one woman's joy was stolen by isolation. While hundreds celebrated their achievements, she remained invisible, trapped on the sidelines of her own triumph. But then, a stranger and his 5-year-old daughter noticed what no one else could see. What happened next defied every social rule, shattered expectations, and proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to let someone suffer alone. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The banquet hall buzzed with energy. Graduates in caps and gowns, families taking photos, music pumping through speakers as bodies filled the dance floor. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, laughter echoed off the walls, and everywhere Eric Hunter looked, people were celebrating. Except for her. Eric stood near the dessert table, half watching his daughter Haven demolish a chocolate chip cookie, when his eyes landed on the young woman sitting alone at a table near the edge of the room. She wore a graduation gown over her wheelchair, but it was her expression that stopped him cold. The way she watched the dancing with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the careful way she held herself, like someone trying very hard to be okay. Around her, the celebration roared on. Groups of graduates danced past her table, their laughter bright and careless. One girl waved at her, a quick, friendly gesture, and the woman waved back with enthusiasm that looked forced. Then the group moved on, absorbed back into the chaos of joy, and she was alone again.
"Daddy, why is that lady sitting all by herself?" Haven's voice cut through his thoughts. She'd stopped mid-bite, cookie crumbs on her pink butterfly dress, her eyes fixed on the woman. "Everybody else is dancing and being happy. Why isn't she?"
"I don't know, sweetheart," Eric said quietly.
"That's sad."
Hayden pronounced it with the absolute certainty of childhood.
"Nobody should be sad at their own party. That's just wrong."
She was right. Something about it felt fundamentally wrong, this woman celebrating alone while the world danced around her. Eric had come to this graduation as a favor. His boss, Mr. Silas, had invited him to his niece's ceremony, and after everything the man had done for him, Eric couldn't say no. Mr. Silas was somewhere across the room now, swept up in family photos and congratulations. Eric had planned to stay an hour, maybe 2, let Haven eat some cake, and then head home to the quiet house that always felt a little too empty. But now, watching this stranger sit alone at her own celebration, something shifted in his chest. "Come on," he said to Haven, taking her hand. "Where are we going?" "To fix something that's wrong."
They crossed the room, weaving between dancing couples and chatting groups. With each step, Eric's heart beat faster. This was crazy. You didn't just walk up to strangers at their graduation. You didn't interrupt someone's moment with, what, pity? Good intentions that might make everything worse? But Haven's small hand in his kept him moving forward, and the image of that woman sitting alone kept pulling him closer. She looked up as they approached, surprise flickering across her face. Up close, Eric could see how young she really was, probably mid-20s at most. Her eyes were green, bright with unshed tears she was clearly fighting to hold back. A name tag on her gown read, Nova Westbrook, B.S. Early Childhood Education. "Hi," Eric said, feeling suddenly awkward under her confused gaze. "My name is Eric Hunter, and this is my daughter Haven. We're here with my boss. His niece graduated today too, and we noticed you were sitting alone." Nova blinked, her carefully maintained composure cracking slightly. "Oh, that's nice of you to notice, but I'm fine, really. I'm just taking a break." "That's not true," Haven blurted out before Eric could speak. She pulled her hand free and stepped closer to Nova's wheelchair, her face set in determination. "You look sad, and this is your special day for being super smart, so you're not supposed to be sad." Nova's eyes widened, and for a moment Eric thought she might cry. Then her careful mask broke, and a real smile pushed through. Surprised, genuine, touched by the blunt honesty only a child could deliver. "You're very observant for someone so small," Nova said softly. "I'm almost 6, Haven announced proudly. That's basically a teenager.
Despite everything, Nova laughed, a genuine, surprised sound that transformed her whole face, made her look younger, less guarded. Eric took a breath, committing to what he'd started. His palms were sweating. This could go so wrong. But the memory of that lonely smile, the way she'd watched everyone else live while she sat on the sidelines, pushed him forward. "Here's the thing," he said. "I know we're complete strangers, and this might be completely inappropriate, but would you let me have this dance?" The smile died on Nova's face. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the thumping bass of the music. Nova's hands tightened in her lap, her knuckles going white. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I can't dance. I mean, obviously I can't." She gestured to her wheelchair, and there was something devastating in that gesture. The way she said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, like her limitation should have been the first thing he noticed. "Why not?" Haven piped up, her head tilted in genuine confusion. "You have arms, don't you? Arms can dance too. Watch." She proceeded to do an elaborate arm-waving dance that looked like she was directing traffic during a hurricane, her light-up sneakers flashing with every movement. Nova laughed again, but this time, tears did spill over, sliding down her cheeks. She wiped at them quickly, embarrassed. "I haven't danced since before my accident. 8 years. I don't even know if I remember how."
8 years. Eric tried to imagine it. 8 years of sitting on the sidelines, of watching everyone else move while you stayed still. 8 years of being excluded from something as simple and joyful as dancing. He crouched down so he was at her eye level, his knees protesting slightly. "Neither have I. I haven't danced since my wife died 5 years ago." The words came out before he could stop them. He never talked about Stellar with strangers, never mentioned the gaping hole her death had left in his life, the way grief had rewritten everything he thought he knew about being human. But something about Nova's raw vulnerability demanded honesty in return. "But I think maybe that's exactly why we should, because we both deserve to be part of the celebration. Your celebration." He held out his hand. Nova stared at it. Eric could see the war happening in her eyes, fear battling hope, years of sitting on the sidelines fighting against the desperate desire to be included. Her hands trembled in her lap. "How would it even work?" she whispered. "I'll hold your hands," Eric said simply, "and we'll move to the music. That's all dancing really is, isn't it? Moving together." The music shifted to something upbeat, peppy. Around them, the celebration continued, oblivious to the small moment of tension and possibility. Very slowly, as if the movement might shatter something precious, Nova reached out and placed her hands in Eric's. They were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. Eric stood, gently pulling her hands up with him, and began to sway to the beat. It felt absurd at first, awkward and exposed. They must have looked ridiculous, him standing there holding her hands while she sat in her wheelchair. But then he caught Nova's eyes and held them. They moved together, swaying to the rhythm. Eric lifted their joined hands up and down, side to side, following the music. Nova's breathing was shallow, quick, but slowly, as the seconds stretched into a minute, something shifted in her expression. The fear eased. The tension in her shoulders relaxed. And there, breaking through like sunlight through clouds, was joy. Real, unguarded joy. "This is crazy," Nova said, but she was smiling through her tears. "The best things usually are," Eric replied. Haven danced circles around them, her dress spinning, her light-up shoes flashing with every step. "See, arms can dance. I was right. I'm always right about dancing." The song filled the space between them. Not a slow dance, not a traditional dance, but something entirely their own. A few people at nearby tables noticed. Eric saw them point, smile. One couple got up to join the dance floor, as if witnessing this moment had reminded them why they were here. A group of graduates moved closer, and one of them, a girl with blonde hair and a bright smile, called out, "Go Nova! You look amazing!" Nova beamed at her, genuinely this time,
and called back, "Thank you." The song changed to something slower, gentler. Eric adjusted their movements, swaying more softly. Nova's hands had stopped shaking. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude mixed with something deeper. Something that looked like the first crack in a wall that had been built over years of disappointment and exclusion. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means. I've spent 8 years watching everyone else live while I just existed on the edges. I forgot what it felt like to be part of things." Eric thought about the past 5 years of his own life, the early mornings and late nights, the exhaustion that went bone deep, the constant fear that he was failing his daughter. The loneliness that had become so familiar he sometimes forgot it was there. "You shouldn't be on the edges. Not today, not ever. You just earned a college degree. You should be right in the center of this celebration." When the song ended, Eric carefully released her hands. Nova wiped at her eyes, laughing at herself, at the mascara probably running down her cheeks. "I probably look like a mess," she said. "You look like someone who just graduated college and danced for the first time in 8 years. That's pretty amazing." "Can we get more cookies now?" Haven asked, practical as always, tugging on Eric's sleeve. "Because dancing makes you hungry, and I only had one, and that's not very many at all." Nova laughed, the sound lighter than before, less weighted with sorrow. "That's some solid logic."
Eric smiled and started to turn away. They'd done what they came to do, pulled someone out of isolation for a few minutes. It was enough. It had to be enough. Strangers at a graduation didn't become anything more than a gesture and a brief memory. "Wait!" Nova's voice stopped him mid-step. When he turned back, she was pulling her phone from a small bag attached to her wheelchair, her cheeks flushed pink. Could I maybe get your number? I'd like to thank you properly. Maybe buy you coffee or something?" Eric stared at her, surprised. Haven immediately grabbed his hand and yanked on it. "Say yes, Daddy! Miss Nova needs friends who aren't sad, and you need friends too because you're always working and being boring." "Haven!" "You don't need to thank me," Eric said to Nova, ignoring his daughter's brutally honest assessment of his social life. "I know," Nova said quickly, "but I'd like to anyway. And honestly, I could use a friend who understands what it's like to feel like you're on the outside looking in." Eric understood that feeling more than she knew. The years since Stellar's death had been a masterclass in existing on the margins, at parent-teacher conferences where everyone else came in couples, at birthday parties where he was the only single dad, in a world designed for pairs when he was painfully, permanently singular. He pulled out his phone and gave her his number. 3 days later, his phone buzzed while he was elbow-deep in electrical wiring at a job site. "Coffee this weekend? My treat. Fair warning, I'm very particular about coffee quality. Nova." Eric stared at the message, a smile tugging at his lips despite himself. "Sounds good. Also fair warning, my daughter will probably insist on coming. She's very particular about making sure you're not still sad. Eric." "Perfect. She can be my happiness inspector. Saturday at 10, there's a cafe on High Street with good accessibility. See you then." Saturday morning arrived with Haven bouncing off the walls with excitement. She'd picked out her outfit the night before, a green hoodie and her favorite jeans. "Is Miss Nova going to be our friend forever?" Haven asked in the car, swinging her legs so hard her sneakers kicked the back of Eric's seat. "I don't know, sweetheart. We're just getting coffee." "But she's nice, right? And she likes you." "We barely know each other." "But you danced with her. That means something. You said that about Mom, too." Eric's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Haven had been a baby when Stellar died. She didn't remember her mother. Everything she knew about Stellar came from photos and Eric's stories. Carefully curated memories designed to give Haven a sense of connection to the woman who'd given everything to bring her into the world. What Eric rarely told Haven was how Stellar had developed severe complications during childbirth, how what should have been the happiest day of their lives had turned into emergency surgeries and failing organs, how Stellar had held their daughter for just 3 precious hours before her body gave out, septic shock that her system couldn't fight. Eric remembered very little from those days except the weight of his newborn daughter in his arms and the impossible silence that followed. The way the nurses had looked at him with pity and fear, wondering how this young father would survive. The moment when he'd realized he was completely alone with a baby who depended on him for everything. He'd named her Haven, like they'd planned together. A safe harbor in the storm. Yeah, Eric said quietly, pushing the memories back where they belonged. Dancing means you trust someone. The cafe was exactly as Nova had described, accessible, cozy, with good natural light and the smell of fresh coffee. Nova was already there when they arrived, sitting at a window table with a mug in front of her. She wore jeans and a soft peach sweater that made her eyes look even brighter. "Miss Nova!" Haven ran over before Eric could stop her, nearly knocking into a chair in her enthusiasm. "We're here for coffee. Well, I'm getting hot chocolate because coffee is too spicy for kids, but Daddy says that's still basically coffee." Nova laughed, catching Haven's excitement. "Hot chocolate is definitely basically coffee, maybe even better." They ordered coffee for the adults, hot chocolate with whipped cream for Haven, and settled in. What Eric thought might be an awkward half-hour of polite conversation turned into something entirely different. "So," Nova said, wrapping her hands around her mug, "tell me about you. Not the sad stuff yet. We can get to that. Tell me something that makes you happy." Eric thought for a moment. Haven's laugh. The real one, not the polite one she does for other people. When something genuinely delights her, she has this full-body laugh that sounds like pure joy. "Like when I saw the really fat squirrel at the park. He was so fat, Daddy, like he ate a whole pizza." Nova grinned. "That does sound like a very fat squirrel. What else makes you happy, Eric?" "Finishing a difficult electrical job and having everything work perfectly on the first try. That moment when the lights come on and you know you got it right." He paused. "What about you?" "Honestly, kids. That's why I went into education. Kids don't have filters. They don't have prejudices they've learned yet. They just see people. When I do my student teaching, the kids ask about my wheelchair once, usually something like, 'Why do you have wheels?' and then they move on. To them, it's just another fact about me, like having blonde hair or green eyes." She took a sip of her coffee. "Adults are different. Adults either avoid looking at me entirely or they stare. They talk to whoever I'm with instead of talking to me directly. They assume I'm mentally disabled along with physically disabled. Or they go the other direction and treat me like I'm inspirational just for existing." "That sounds exhausting," Eric said. "It is. Some days more than others." Nova's expression softened. "But then, someone like you comes along and asks me to dance, and it reminds me that not everyone is afraid of stepping outside their comfort zone." Haven had finished her hot chocolate and was now coloring on a placemat the cafe had provided. Eric and Nova fell into easier conversation. Books they'd read, shows they'd watched, places they'd lived. Eric learned that Nova had grown up in Phoenix, that she missed the desert sometimes but had fallen in love with Ohio seasons. Nova learned that Eric had lived in Columbus his whole life, that his mother had helped raise him as a single parent too after his father left when Eric was 7. "Is that why you're so good at it? Because you watched your mom do it?" "Maybe," I admitted. "She taught me that loving your kid means showing up, even when you're exhausted, even when you don't know what you're doing. You just keep showing up." "You're a good dad," Nova said quietly. "Haven's lucky to have you." The words hit deeper than Eric expected. He was so used to feeling like he was failing, forgetting permission slips, sending Haven to school with mismatched socks, surviving on frozen dinners and takeout more nights than he cared to admit. "Thank you," Eric said. "That means a lot." 4 hours evaporated like minutes. When they finally left the cafe, Haven was half asleep on Eric's shoulder, exhausted from her sugar high and the excitement of the morning. "Can we do this again?" Nova asked, as they stood by her van, a modified vehicle with hand controls. "I'd like that, but maybe next time just the two of us. My mom can watch Haven." Nova's eyes widened slightly. "Like a date?" "Yeah," Eric said, feeling his courage catch up with his words. "Like a date." A slow smile spread across Nova's face. "I'd really like that." Their first real date was the following Friday. Eric was nervous in a way he hadn't been since high school, changing his shirt 3 times, checking his hair and every reflective surface, arriving at the restaurant 10 minutes early and sitting in his truck giving himself a pep talk. The restaurant was Nova's choice, an Italian place in the Sharp North with good accessibility and, according to Nova, the best gnocchi you'll ever have. Eric waited by the entrance, watching couples and groups filter in and out, wondering if this was crazy. They barely knew each other. Nova probably just felt obligated because he'd been nice to her at graduation. Then he saw her rolling up the sidewalk, and all his doubts evaporated. She wore a blue dress that brought out the blonde in her hair. When she spotted him, her whole face lit up, genuine happiness that erased the careful guardedness he'd seen at graduation. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless. "Hi," Eric replied, suddenly feeling underdressed in his khakis and button-down. "You look beautiful. You clean up pretty nice yourself." Inside, the hostess led them to a table near the back, quieter, more intimate than the bustling front section. They ordered wine, then food, and as plates of pasta and bread arrived, they fell into the kind of conversation that made the rest of the restaurant fade away. Nova told him about her accident in more detail, the lake, the friends she'd been with, the moment of impact that changed everything. "I was underwater for maybe 30 seconds before someone pulled me out," she said, twirling the gnocchi on her fork. "But in those 30 seconds, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't move them. I remember thinking very clearly, this is how my life ends." But it didn't end. No, it just became completely different. Nova took a sip of wine. The first year was the hardest, learning to live in a body that didn't work the way it used to, relearning everything, how to get dressed, how to shower, how to exist in a world that wasn't built for wheelchairs, and grieving the life I thought I'd have. She looked up at him. "But you understand that, don't you? Having to grieve a future you thought was certain?"
Eric nodded slowly. When Stellar died, it wasn't just losing her. It was losing everything we'd planned. The life we were supposed to build, the family we were supposed to raise together. Suddenly, I was alone with a newborn, and every single thing I'd imagined about fatherhood was different. "Do you ever resent it?" Nova asked quietly. "Not Haven, I know you love her, but the situation, being forced into single parenthood?" "Sometimes," Eric admitted. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. "Sometimes I'm angry that Stellar left me to do this alone, which is irrational because she didn't choose to die, but grief isn't rational. Sometimes I see couples at Haven School and I feel this surge of resentment that they get to share the load, that they have someone to tag out with when they're exhausted." He paused, pushing food around his plate. "But then I look at Haven and I think, if I could go back and choose a different life, one where Stellar lived but Haven didn't exist exactly as she is now, I wouldn't trade her for anything. Because Haven is perfect. She's funny and kind and sees the world in this beautiful, uncomplicated way. I wouldn't trade her for anything." "That's love," Nova said softly. "Real love, not the easy kind, but the kind that chooses to stay even when it's hard." The conversation shifted to lighter things. Haven's recent obsession with dinosaurs, Nova's ongoing battle with her student loan servicer, and their shared love of terrible reality TV shows they'd never admit to watching. Somewhere between dinner and dessert, Nova reached across the table and took Eric's hand. He looked down at their joined hands, her fingers smaller than his, her grip surprisingly strong. "Thank you for this," she said. "For seeing me. Not the wheelchair, not the disability, me. Thank you for giving me a reason to put on real pants instead of spending Friday night watching Frozen for the 500th time," Eric replied, and Nova laughed. When they left the restaurant, Eric walked Nova to her van. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of late summer flowers from nearby planters. They lingered by the driver's side door, neither quite ready for the evening to end. "I had a really good time," Nova said. "Me too. Can I be honest about something? Please." Nova took a breath. "I'm scared. I really like you, Eric, but I'm terrified that at some point you are going to realize that being with me is too complicated, that the logistics of dating someone with a disability are too much work, that you'll meet someone easier and realize you don't need the complications I bring." Eric crouched down so they were eye to eye, the same position he'd taken at graduation. "Can I be honest too?" She nodded. "I'm scared too. I'm scared that I'm too broken, too damaged by grief to be a good partner.
I'm scared that Haven will scare you off, because dating a single dad means you don't just get me, you get my daughter too. I'm scared that I'll fail you the way I sometimes feel like I've failed Stellar by not saving her. He took her hands. But here's what I know. I haven't felt this alive, this hopeful, in 5 years. You make me want to be braver. You make me think maybe I get to have more than just survival. So yeah, I'm scared. But I want to try anyway. Nova's eyes were shining with tears. Okay, let's be scared together. Eric kissed her then, soft and certain under the streetlights. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling.
One coffee date became 2 proper dates, then 3. They went to a botanical garden where Haven could run through paths while Eric and Nova talked. They went to an accessible hiking trail that wound through woods painted with autumn colors. Nova came to Haven's kindergarten play and cheered louder than anyone when Haven forgot her lines and started talking about the fat squirrel instead. Summer faded into fall. Nova started her job as a teacher's aide, coming home with stories about kids that made Eric laugh until his stomach hurt. Eric's work stayed demanding, but Nova began joining them for dinner several nights a week, showing up with groceries and a determination to teach Eric how to cook something more adventurous than mac and cheese. "Miss Nova, do you like my daddy?" Haven asked one afternoon at the playground, her directness catching both adults off guard. They'd been sitting on a bench watching her swing when she hopped down and marched over with purpose. "Because I think he likes you. He smiles all funny when you text him." Nova's cheeks flushed pink. "I like your daddy very much." "Good," Haven said seriously, "because he needs someone to make him less lonely. And you need someone too, so it's perfect. That's just math." After Haven ran back to the swings, Nova turned to Eric. "Does she always solve complex emotional situations with mathematics?" "Pretty much," Eric said. "She gets it from her mother. Stellar was an accountant. Everything in life could be solved with numbers and logic." "Smart woman." "Yeah, she was." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Haven play. Eric realized this was what he'd been missing. Not just romance, but partnership. Someone to share the small moments with, the ordinary afternoons that made up most of life. Nova didn't just tolerate Haven. She genuinely enjoyed her, engaged with her imagination, treated her like a whole person with valid thoughts and feelings. One September evening, they were sitting on a bench outside their usual ice cream shop. Haven chased pigeons with the single-minded determination of someone who truly believed catching one was possible. The setting sun painted everything gold and amber.
Eric's heart was pounding. He'd been thinking about this for weeks, the words building pressure in his chest until he thought he might burst. "I love you," he said. The words hung in the air between them. Nova turned to him slowly, her eyes wide. "What?" "I love you," Eric repeated now, his voice steadier. "I'm terrified, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I needed you to know. I love the way you listen to Haven like her stories matter. I love how you don't let the world make you smaller. I love your strength and your vulnerability and the way you challenge me to be better. I love you, Nova, and I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm more scared of not telling you." Tears slipped down Nova's cheeks. For a long moment, Eric's stomach dropped. He'd miscalculated. She didn't feel the same way. He'd ruined everything. Then Nova reached out and took his hand. "I love you too. I've been in love with you since that second coffee date, when you noticed I was struggling to reach something on a high shelf and you didn't make a big deal about it, just quietly got it for me. When you treated my wheelchair like a fact, not a tragedy. When you saw me as a whole person, not a problem to solve or a charity case." She squeezed his hand tighter. "I'm terrified too. I'm scared you'll wake up one day and realize being with someone like me is too hard, too complicated. I'm scared I can't be what Haven needs. I'm scared of failing you both." "You could never fail us," Eric said fiercely. "No, but you're already part of our lives. Haven adores you. He swallowed hard.
I thought I'd never feel this way again. After Stellar died, I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd had my chance at love and lost it, and I just had to focus on being the best father I could be. And you are. You're an incredible father. But I don't want to just be a father. I want to be your partner. I want to build a life with you. I want Haven to grow up seeing what real love looks like. Imperfect and scary and absolutely worth it. Nova was fully crying now. Maybe being scared together is better than being lonely apart. Yeah, Eric said softly. Maybe it is. He leaned in and kissed her, gentle and certain. Haven's delighted squeal broke them apart. She'd apparently been watching the whole time. I knew it, Haven shouted, running toward them with her arms spread wide. I told you it was math. Now we can get a puppy. Eric and Nova laughed, pulling Haven into a hug between them. This small, fierce girl who'd noticed what no one else could see, who'd demanded that loneliness not be allowed to win, who'd somehow known exactly what all three of them needed. If you'd asked Eric Hunter what he imagined when he thought about proposing to someone, he wouldn't have pictured doing it in a hospital cafeteria at 3 a.m. But life had taught him that the best moments rarely looked the way you planned. Nova had been in a minor car accident. Someone ran a red light, T-boned her accessible van. She was fine, mostly. Bruised ribs, some whiplash, shaken up, but alive. Eric had gotten the call while putting Haven into bed, and had immediately called his mother to come stay with her while he rushed to the hospital. He'd found Nova in the ER, exhausted and in pain, but trying to be brave. They'd kept her for observation, and Eric had refused to leave. Somewhere around 2 a.m, after Nova had finally fallen into restless sleep, Eric had gone to the cafeteria for terrible coffee. That's where it hit him. Sitting alone under fluorescent lights with a styrofoam cup warming his hands. Life was fragile. Love was fragile. Every moment was borrowed time, and he was done being afraid. He went to the hospital gift shop, closed, but he sweet-talked a janitor into letting him look around, and found a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a compass. When Nova woke up a few hours later, Eric was sitting beside her bed, the necklace in his hand. "Marry me," he said without preamble. Nova blinked, confused, and probably still drugged. "What?" "Marry me," Eric repeated. "I don't have a ring. I have this necklace that cost $20 from the hospital gift shop. But I'm asking anyway, because tonight reminded me that nothing is guaranteed, and I don't want to waste another day being too scared to ask for what I want. I want you. I want us. I want to build a life where Haven grows up with both of us, where we face everything together." He held up the necklace. "A compass. Because you helped me find my direction again. You helped me remember that I'm allowed to want more than just survival." Nova was crying again, but she was smiling too. "You're proposing to me in a hospital?" "I'm proposing to you in a hospital. Is that okay?" "It's perfect," Nova whispered. Yes, I'll marry you." Eric put the necklace around her neck with shaking hands, then kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Outside, dawn was breaking over Columbus, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. They got married the following spring in the university banquet hall where they'd first met. Haven was the flower girl, wearing a dress with butterflies because some things were meant to come full circle. Eric's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Mr. Silas was there, beaming with pride, telling anyone who would listen that he'd known from the start these two were meant for each other. Nova's family had flown in from Arizona, her younger sister serving as maid of honor. But the moment that mattered most was the first dance. The DJ played their song, the same upbeat pop track that had been playing at the graduation reception almost 2 years earlier. Eric walked to where Nova sat in her wheelchair, beautiful in her white dress, her blonde hair crowned with small flowers. He held out his hands. Nova placed hers in his, and they moved together exactly like they had that first time, swaying to the music, their hands raised and lowered, side to side. But this time, there was no fear, no uncertainty, just two people who'd found each other in a moment of loneliness and had chosen again and again to keep choosing each other.
Haven danced circles around them, her butterfly dress spinning, her light-up shoes flashing. The whole room was watching now, but Eric barely noticed. His entire world had narrowed to the woman in front of him, the joy radiating from her face, the future stretching out before them like an open road. "I love you," Nova said, her voice carrying over the music. "I love you too," Eric replied. "Thank you for asking a dance." "Thank you for asking." The song played on, and they kept moving, proving once again that the best dances don't require perfect steps or traditional forms. They just require two people brave enough to reach for each other, to refuse loneliness, to believe that love is worth the risk. And sometimes they require a 5-year-old girl with a big heart and even bigger opinions, who understood something adults often forget. Nobody should ever have to celebrate alone. Everyone deserves to be seen, to be included, to be loved exactly as they are. The dance ended. The celebration continued. And 3 lives that had been marked by loss and isolation became something new together. A family built not on perfection, but on courage, compassion, and the radical act of noticing when someone needs you most. That's the thing about the most important moments in life. They don't announce themselves with trumpets and spotlights. They happen quietly, in crowded rooms where most people are looking elsewhere. They happen when a child asks a simple question and a father decides to answer with action instead of words. They happen when someone sitting alone at their own celebration finally gets asked to dance. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that single moment changes everything. Friends, if this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, if it reminded you of the power we all have to change someone's life with a simple act of kindness, please don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join our Everbell Stories family.